Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sarah's Favorite Authors and our first episode of 2026. I know it's February, but January was consumed with the launching of my own book, Another World, and if you are interested, you can purchase it on Amazon in paperback or Kindle edition. I realized as I looked back at the authors that I've talked about so far that they are older writers, and I make no apologies for that. I love older books. I love to get my hands on a classic when I can. However, I do read modern literature as well, and so today I thought it was probably about time that I pulled out an author who is currently still writing. In fact, the man can't seem to stop writing. If you're familiar with Brandon Sanderson, I just have to say, he's only about 5 years older than me, and he has already authored almost 100 books. I have most definitely not read all of them, and I can't even make any promises to read all of them considering how many he has written. But I do have his books on my shelf. I do have many that I have read and many more that I am looking forward to reading. I was introduced to Brandon Sanderson by the bestie when she brought the Mistborn series to my attention. I was transported, and I have to say that what I love the most about Brandon Sanderson's books is the fact that they are so unique. Brandon Sanderson manages to tell stories in a new way that I've never seen anything like it before. For example, in his Mistborn series, people get power from consuming small bits of metal. And depending on the metal that you consume is going to determine what power you have. And not everyone can do this, and not everyone can use just any metal. There are certain people who can use copper and etc., to be able to use those powers that the metal can help to unlock. And if it sounds complicated, it is. And actually, I have to admit, it gets even more complex than that. But again, as crazy as that sounds, as complex as that sounds, when you read the book, he explains things masterfully. It is not difficult to follow what's going on. And then you have Warbreaker, one of his few books that stands alone. And I would highly recommend Warbreaker. I think it is my favorite book of his that I have read so far, not just because it is obviously really well written, but I just loved the story that was being told as these nations and these peoples are potentially facing war. And what they're trying to do is there are those who are trying to start the war, and there are those who are trying to stop it before it even begins. And the magic that is used in this story comes from color and from breath. And once again, I can't even fully explain it to you. It is so complex. But when you read it, it makes sense as he has this ability to describe concepts that we've never even considered before. And so you see these characters, in particular, there's two sisters. The eldest sister who has her duties as she's expected to perform, marriages of convenience that she is expected to fulfill, and yet that is not what happens. And now she's trying to figure out what to do with herself. But the sister who does marry for the convenience, for the hope of peace, and what happens to her, and understanding how things play out as they aren't even aware of one another's parts in the larger story, and trying to figure out who you can trust and who you can't. There were some amazing twists and turns in this as we learned the true heart behind different characters, whether for good or for bad. I have enjoyed this story so much as my husband is currently reading it himself to try to understand my love for Brandon Sanderson. I would definitely recommend the Mistborn series. It is a trilogy. However, I have recently come to find out that there is another series of books that are within that same universe. But as I said, the man is prolific in his writing. And I also really highly recommend Warbreaker. And I would recommend Warbreaker specifically because of the fact that it is a standalone book, as most of his books are not standalones. This one is. So if you're curious about Brandon Sanderson and you want to try out his style and see if you like it, Warbreaker could be a really great place to start. Also, right now, I'm going to do something that I have not done yet, and I may not do ever again, but I'm going to recommend a book of his that I haven't even read yet. Tress of the Emerald Sea is a fairy tale that he wrote for his wife. I have not read it yet. My mother purchased it for me for Christmas. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I have heard nothing but glowing reviews for this story. If you are into fantasy stories, I guarantee that you're going to enjoy Brandon Sanderson. The fact that he creates worlds that we've never seen before, it only heightens the experience as you are drawn into brand new worlds that you have not only never seen before, but probably never even considered. Look for his books at your local library.